This day in sports history. Hey, you've heard me talk about the Stirling Soap Company for a while now, and whether you've jumped on board and smell like an absolute champion, or you've been a little hesitant, then here's a great opportunity for you. We're giving away a $75 gift card to use at stirlingsoap.com. Stirling Soap is 100% natural and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways for your chance to win a $75 gift card to the Stirling Soap Company. I've put a link in the show notes as well. Now, let's get back to the episode. It's April 19th, and on this day in 1986, it was the Vindication in Vegas heavyweight fight between Larry Holmes and Michael Spinks. Now, these two had fought the previous September, with Spinks giving Holmes his first career loss in a unanimous decision. Even so, Holmes came into this one as an 8-5 favorite to reclaim his title, and from the opening bell it looked like he would take it back quickly and not allow ringside judges an opportunity to decide this one. He hurried out of his corner and was the aggressor, perhaps maybe a little too aggressive. After throwing 2 punches, Holmes grabbed Spinks like a wrestler and threw him to the canvas, drawing a rebuke from referee Mills Lane. Holmes kept coming after Spinks, but he was not able to do much damage, and he started to tire out. Spinks dominated the middle rounds and really started landing some shots in the 8th.
Left hand was a good one. Now the right, and a combination of punches by Spinks. You see what happened? The first punch was caught on the gloves for large part.
But you see what happens when you throw a series of punches, Barrett? Some of those punches will land.
But with about a minute left in the 14th, Holmes connected with a right hand, and the lights dimmed considerably for Spinks, wobbling for a step and nearly going down before regaining his footing.
And there was a right hand by Holmes, and Spinks is in a world of trouble right now.
Good right hand.
Now, what shot by Holmes?
This is when God gets his man out of there.
And Spinks is all but out. Holmes looking for the one finisher. Spinks trying to fight off the ropes.
Oh, I don't understand this. Why don't I go for him?
Larry just has not gotten up on top of Michael Spinks.
It's a big opportunity here.
And like you just heard there, surprisingly, Holmes, who was adamant pre-fight about not letting this one go to the judges, let Spinks recover. After landing another right hand, a visibly stunned Spinks wandered around the rink, but Holmes didn't attack him. When the bell sounded at the end of the round, Spinks was able to recover in his corner for the final round. And after the 15th, the fight ended. The ringside announcers all believed Holmes had won the rematch, but there was a hint that since this fight was in Nevada, funny things can happen. And it did. Michael Spinks was announced as the winner in a split decision to retain his IBF heavyweight title and remain undefeated. It was revealed later that Holmes had broken his right thumb in the 3rd round and yet continued on. Holmes announced his retirement in November, but he returned to the ring a few years later and continued boxing until he fought his last fight in 2002 at the age of 52. On this day in 1967, it was the Boston Marathon, and the first woman to enter the race very nearly did not finish. Not because she lacked the stamina to finish the race, but rather race officials were upset she was even there. Kathrine Switzer was a trailblazer in women's running. At a time when women's cross-country teams or distance teams did not exist, Switzer pounded the pavement whenever she could, and she was coached by Arnie Briggs, and to motivate her through intensive distance efforts, he talked about great moments in the Boston Marathon through the years. Hearing story after story of the great event did motivate her initially, but eventually started to frustrate her to the point where she snapped, "Oh, let's quit talking about the Boston Marathon and run the damn thing." No woman had ever run Boston, and in fact were not permitted to run the marathon. It was thought that women were too fragile for such a long distance. Briggs told Kathrine that if she could prove to him that she was capable of running the distance, he would take her to the Boston Marathon. 3 weeks before the 1967 race, she did. Actually, they ran 31 miles that day because after 26.2, she felt it had been too easy. She paid the $3 entry fee and officially entered the race as KV Switzer. On race day, Switzer was running in a pack with her coach Arnie Briggs and her boyfriend, an All-American football player named Tom Miller. The race started at noon as opposed to the early morning starts we have now, and trouble started around mile 4. A flatbed truck carrying media and photographers drove past Switzer's group. There was also a person on that truck very opposed to women being in the race.
On this truck was the race directors. One of them was a feisty character by the name of Jock Semple. He just stopped the bus, jumped off, and ran after me. Suddenly I turned and he just grabbed me and screamed at me, "Get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers." And then he started clawing at me, trying to rip my numbers off. And I was so surprised. And he had the fiercest face of any guy I'd ever seen, and out of control, really. I was terrified. And all of a sudden, my boyfriend, Big Tom, gave Jock the most incredible cross-body block and sent Jock flying. And all of this happened in front of the press truck. The journalists got very aggressive. "What are you trying to prove? Are you a suffragette? Are you a crusader?" Whatever that is, And I said, "What? I'm just trying to run."
Switzer continued to run and finished the race in 4 hours, 20 minutes. She said she knew she had to finish because if she didn't, people would never believe that a woman was capable of running 26.2 miles. In the immediate aftermath, the Amateur Athletic Union barred all women from marathons. But Switzer's action did put in motion a sea change that eventually led to the inclusion of women and an official women's race in the 1972 edition of the Boston Marathon. On this day in 1987, 1992, and 1998, it was a great day to be Davis Love III. Let's start in 87 when a 23-year-old Davis Love broke through for his first tour victory in only his second full season on the PGA Tour. Now, this was the MCI Heritage Golf Classic in Hilton Head, South Carolina. As a North Carolina boy, a former Tar Heel golfer, and having a father who was a teaching pro based out of St. Simons Island, Georgia, Hilton Head was familiar territory. While he may have set up camp 1 week out of the year, Davis made it his home. In the 97 edition, Love was in a battle with Steve Jones, who was also looking for his first win as a pro.
140 yards, a little knockdown. How's this golf shot? Beautiful, beautiful.
When they got to the 18th tee, Jones had a one-shot lead, but an errant tee shot sailed out of bounds, and it resulted in a double bogey. Love made a par, and he won by a shot, collecting his first plaid jacket as winner of the Heritage. He won for a second time in 1991, same venue, different date, and then he came back in 1992 and picked up his third plaid jacket on this day. Now, I don't want to say winning a golf tournament is easy, it is not, but his win in 92 was a lot easier than 5 years earlier. He shot a final round 68 to win by 4 shots over Chip Beck. 92 was a pretty good year for DL3. Just 3 weeks before this, he had won the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass, and he would win a third time that year at the Greater Greensboro Open. Which leads us to this day in 1998, when Love won the Heritage for the 4th time, firing a final round 65 to beat Glenn Day by 7 shots. He would go on to win the Heritage one more time in 2002, adding a 5th tartan plaid jacket to his closet. He is the Jack Nicklaus of Harbor Town, with the most wins of any golfer at that tournament. On this day in 1981, the longest baseball game in history hit the pause button, and it did not end until a couple of months later. This was a AAA International League game between the Rochester Red Wings and the Pawtucket Red Sox, and it featured a couple of future Hall of Famers in Wade Boggs and Cal Ripken Jr. The start of the game was delayed for more than a half hour due to issues with the stadium lights, so the first pitch was not delivered until 8 p.m. on the 18th. The 1,700 fans in the stands and the players on the field were not aware of the odyssey they were about to embark upon. Rochester took a 1-0 lead in the bottom of the ninth, but after a sac fly scored a run for the Red Sox, the game was headed to extra innings. And from there, the game dragged on and on and on. It was also cold in Rhode Island that evening. It wasn't exactly warm when the game started, but the temperature dropped significantly throughout the evening. And as the game dragged on into the early morning hours, players resorted to burning wooden bats in an attempt to stay warm in the dugouts. After the bats they could burn ran out, they peeled off pieces of the wooden benches to keep the fires going. And the wind was blowing in pretty stiffly, which had an effect on the scoring. Several well-hit balls that would have been homers under normal circumstances were long outs instead. And another thing, all leagues had a curfew. In fact, the International League's curfew was 12:45. But the rule book that the home plate umpire had in his pocket did not list that anywhere, or at least anywhere that he could find, and so the game played on and on. In the 21st inning, the tie was finally broken, with Rochester scoring in the top half. However, leave it up to future Hall of Famer Wade Boggs to come up in the bottom half of the inning with a man in scoring position and tie it up with a base hit RBI to extend the game once again. Even Boggs' teammates let out audible groans that the game was tied up again. Boggs said when he got back to the dugout, he felt like his teammates wanted to slug him instead of hugging him. And so the game continued, tied at 2 into the 32nd inning. By this point, it was 4 in the morning, and the players, along with the 19 fans who were still left in the stands, were getting tired and a bit delirious. Pawtucket's general manager reached out to the International League commissioner, alerting him that the game was still in progress, which horrified the commissioner, and he said the game should be halted at the completion of the next inning. So, at 4:07 a.m. at the end of the 32nd inning, after a little more than 8 hours of game time, the game was paused, tied at 2. As the bleary-eyed players headed home to grab some sleep before an 11 a.m. first pitch later that morning for Game 3 of the series, they passed early-rising church folks headed to Easter sunrise services. So, it was suggested that the completion of this game take place before they started their scheduled Sunday game, but Rochester's manager asked for it to be delayed due to risk of injury. So instead, the teams finished this one out on June 23rd when the Red Wings returned to Pawtucket. The game only took another 18 minutes to finish, with the Red Sox getting the winning run in the bottom of the 33rd inning. This game set numerous records, including longest game by innings, 33, and time, 8 hours, 25 minutes. There were a couple of guys who, despite double-digit plate appearances, went hitless. Rochester's Dallas Williams had the most futility in this game, going 0 for 13 in 15 trips to the plate. But Russ Larrabee of the Paw Sox deserves a mention. He went 0 for 11, striking out 7 times, becoming the first player in history to achieve what's called the titanium sombrero, or striking out more than 6 times in a game. Pawtucket used 8 pitchers, with Bobby Ojeda picking up the win. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. You've certainly heard hard liquor referred to as spirits, right? Well, that originated in the Middle Ages when it was thought that a demon or a spirit was trapped in the alcoholic beverage, and people assumed that that's why people acted like they did when they drank a little bit too much of it. It's also where the clinking of glasses tradition started, with people thinking that spirits fled when bells rang. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.